What year were you born?
I was born in 1934.
Where were you born and where did you grow up?
I was born in Long Beach, California. I spent the first 6 years in Long Beach. The next 4 years we moved up to Las Vegas during World War II. And in 1944 we moved down to Escondido. Lived in Escondido on a ranch there. And then we moved from there to El Cajon. We had a ranch there. And then we sold that and moved to Mission Valley. We had a ranch there. And I went through high school 3 years at Grossmont. And a year and a half at Hoover. Actually, it's 2.5 years at Grossmont and a year and a half at Hoover. And from there, I went into the U.S. Navy.
What was your neighborhood like as a kid?
Mostly it was ranches and farmland, with the exception of the time in Las Vegas. Then we lived in a trailer park.
What was school like when you were a kid? What challenges did you face?
Well, I started school in Long Beach, and then when we moved up to Las Vegas, I went to a little school. It was a 2-room school with the first and the fourth grades in one room, and it was first and fourth grade in one room, and the fifth and sixth was in the other room.
Yeah.
What was the first job you had and what was it like?
The first job I had, well, the first one I had was laughing with my father, other than the fact that I was ranching, and that was a full-time job, so to speak.
What were your teenage years like and how did you meet your spouse?
What was my teen years like?
Your teenage years when you were a teenager?
Yeah. Well, that was basically, I was going to high school, working full-time, and my dad was sick, so I was working full-time to help. The guy gave me a special work permit where I could help with the family. And so it was just probably school, taking care of the animals on the ranch, and working.
How did you meet Grandma?
I met Grandma in Norwalk because I was taking guys from the naval station up there at Point Magoo, and I was going to San Diego, so I'd take them down to Norwalk and drop them off. Then when I went back, I'd pick them up again. And this one time I didn't have the money to go to San Diego, so they said they'd pay for me to go to Norwalk if I'd take them down there. So I took them down there, and I slept in the car behind a church. And the next day they wanted me to take them to the beach. So your grandmother didn't have any dates, so her and I kind of paired off to go to the beach, and that was the end of my life as a rowdy round guy.
Baby, what did you say, Grandpa?
I was a rowdy guy. I was in the Navy, and I'd done a lot of drinking.
You did a lot of drinking?
Yes.
That's great. I can't see you drinking, Grandpa. How long did you serve in the Navy?
Well, all told, 8 years.
Longer than Max. What major conflicts do you remember?
Well, I was in the Korean War, and then after I got out of the Navy, the Vietnam War came along. And of course, I was up in Vegas during World War II. I remember when Pearl Harbor was born. I was living in Long Beach at the time. We lived on 226 West 19th Street, Long Beach. And right around the corner was a little furniture store that had a TV in the window, a little bitty TV. And everybody used to crowd around it outside there. And that's when they announced that we went out there in the morning, and well, we heard that they had bombed Pearl Harbor, so we went down to the store where we can watch TV.
How did you feel about those events that occurred?
Well, I think war is a hell of a big waste of life.
Yeah.
I don't believe in war. I think there's lots of other ways of settling these problems, and wars are caused by politicians mainly, or they're also religious and also land grabs.
Um, what jobs did you have when you were in the Navy, and what did they teach you?
I was an aviation machinist, mate. They taught me how to work on aircraft engines. I was a plane captain. They taught me how to load, skip a load on a transport. We were flying transports. We went from Japan over to Korea and evacuated the wounded. And so I learned how to work on aircraft and fly an aircraft. I was a flight engineer.
If you could do anything different, what would you have done?
If I could do anything different, I don't think I'd have done much of anything different other than possibly not drank so much when I was in the Navy.
How has America changed in your lifetime?
Not for the good. When I was a kid, when your grandma and I were married even, we'd go away and never lock our house. I left my garage door open for 2 weeks while we were on vacation, come back, and the only thing that happened is somebody put a big 6-foot level in my garage, and we never did find out where it came from. Pardon me. But there's more violence in the world, more crime, gangs. We never even heard of gangs when I was a kid. No such thing in high school as problems with dope and gangs.
How has the world changed in general, like throughout your life?
How has it changed? It's got more violent. It's the morals of the nation have went to pot.
If you could give any advice to my generation, what would you give? What kind of advice would you give them?
Well, I think I'd tell them to pay more attention to the 10 Commandments and stay away from drugs and stay away from gang violence. And get an education.
What kind of education did you have when you were younger? Do you think it's different from today's?
Well, I don't know. I have not. I can't do today's math the way you do it. I have to do it the way we did it. So the way they do things have changed in school. Things that we done that surprises me that the newer generations don't do. We had basically we had to have mandatory arithmetic, mandatory science, mandatory biology, mandatory history. You had to have all those things before you could even graduate. And today's children don't have that. They're not structured that way.
Yeah. How did it feel when you left the Navy? How were you treated?
When I left the Navy, well, since I left before the Vietnam thing, I was treated all right. In fact, nobody hardly even mentioned the Korean War. I've been through, since I'm in the Veterans of Foreign Wars, I have went to different classrooms in schools to talk about this with the other members of the VFW, and they've heard of World War I, World War II, and I think I made a mistake. I think I said something about I was around when World War I broke out. I wasn't. I was around when World War II broke out. But anyway, people have, everybody hears about Vietnam, but nobody hears about Korea. And some of the high schools that I've been in, even high school kids have never heard of the Korean War.
We learned about it this year, but we didn't. It's not like a huge topic. Like we don't spend a lot of time on it. When you and Grandma got married, was it hard to, like, be married when you were in the Navy?
I wasn't in the Navy when I got married.
Oh.
I got out of the Navy and I went to work for Douglas Aircraft in Long Beach, California, because that was a requirement my father-in-law put on it for us to get married. There was quite a disparity in our ages at the time. Grandma only had turned 17 and I was 22 when I got married.
Was it hard to find a job after you didn't work for the Douglas aircraft?
Well, I got laid off at Douglas. It was during, they started passing me around to department because I was a hard worker, so they wanted to keep me. But finally, the union stepped in and said they couldn't move me no more. So I got hit in the layoff, and by then, a lot of the jobs were gone out there. So I ended up working in a gas station because that was the only thing available at the time. And then I went, from there, I went back into, I went to Cutting Edge Supply Company, and then I went over to Stuart Davis Custom Aircraft Engine Overhauling. And I stayed there until I requested a raise that I had due to me, and they said they couldn't give me the raise, so I applied for a job in the post office department, and I told him that I gave him the 2 weeks notice that I had to give him, and he wanted me to stay there. He offered me a 75-cent an hour raise if I'd stay there, which was a big raise in days, but I told him, I said, you know, I don't want to have to threaten to quit every time just to get a raise. I said, that wasn't the purpose of me telling you I was going to go get a job.
Yeah. When Pearl Harbor happened, do you remember, like, what it was like around your city or, like...
Oh, yes. Boy, things tightened up. We had blackouts every night. Anyway, we had blackouts every night. We had an air raid. We had some Japanese photography planes fly over Long Beach. They came off of submarines, and they flew over Long Beach, and they had the ACAC batteries were opening up on them, and we would stand outside. Of course, everybody said you shouldn't be standing outside because all this shrapnel was coming down all over. And we had a piece of shrapnel hit my uncle's car. It went right through the top, down through the seats, and right out into the ground. My uncle had that piece of shrapnel for a long time. But if I'd have been in the house, and I could have got hit with shrapnel in the house just as easy as outside. So we stood out and watched it.
What was the schools like during that time? Do you remember?
Oh yeah, it's well, schools were different at that time. We went to school. I don't know of any fighting going on in the school, but until I got in high school, we didn't have fights, and it was very strict. I mean, if you didn't pay attention in class, you got a ruler across the back of your hand, or back of your backside. It was pretty strict. You paid attention in class.
Okay.